Doug and I met training for the AIDS Ride, a bike trip from New York to Boston that raised crucial funds for AIDS organizations. It required discipline, early mornings, and a commitment to something bigger than ourselves, and from the start, we felt like we came from the same type of place. We started dating quickly. In our late 20s, we already had a sense of how relationships worked and what we wanted. The ride was in August. I met his parents, he met mine, and by the high holy days, things were serious. And then, just before Rosh Hashanah, Doug said, "I feel like I have to admit something I haven't shared yet." We were on the phone, and I braced myself. "I guess the easiest way to explain it," he said, is, "I don't fast on Yom Kippur." At the time, I was in my 5th and final year of rabbinical school, a fact he certainly knew, and I had known that he had grown up in a nice Reform movement household in Andover, Massachusetts. I said, "What are you talking about? Everybody fasts on Yom Kippur, even my non-Jewish friends." And that is when his true identity emerged. Doug explained that since he had been around 11, he had been an atheist. He believed religion caused more harm than good, more hatred, wars, and division. He didn't need a made-up God to be a good person. To say I was surprised would be putting it mildly. I brought him to lovely Shabbat dinners all summer. I had taken him to B'nai Jeshurun on the Upper West Side. It was the late 90s. He sang in college. They did all that singing. And apparently, all of it had made his skin crawl. Over the next 8 months, we dove deep into this conversation, often ending in me shouting or squawking. I was in rabbinical school when we started dating. We talked about the what's of religion, the whys, the hows, the whos. We talked about my family and his, about the joy that Shabbat brought to our weekly table, the Jewish summer camp at which I was raised, my father having been the director, imbuing every single thing we did in my house with a Jewish neshama, a Jewish soul. We talked about his family and how their Judaism was practiced lovingly, but not necessarily as core. He told me how when he didn't want to become bar mitzvah, his rabbi gently explained the consequences that might be there, especially how hard it might be for his bubby. He really loved his bubby. He also really loved his rabbi and speaks about him to this day. Because the rabbi said to him, if you're going to have adult conversations with us, then we're willing to have those conversations with you. And in fact, it was because of this piece about his bubby that he did in fact become bar mitzvah. He told me how he went on to continue in Hebrew school through confirmation because he didn't want to say that he didn't believe in something if he didn't know what he was talking about or he didn't know why, a trait I appreciate in theory but has become quite irritating in practice. At one point, we considered breaking up. Perhaps this divide was too hard, too big to bridge. Religion and its 4,000 years of history might in fact be more than what little Leora, Kaye, and Doug Gordon could work out successfully. But oh, boo-hoo, we loved each other, there had to be a way, and that is what leads me to this evening. How, pray tell, you may be asking, have you, over 23 years of a relationship, in fact made this work between an atheist and a rabbi? And how might we, in our families, or our friendships, or our work environments, find ways to bridge the chasms that exist for any of you? We realized we were never going to convince that the other was wrong, that the other was wrong, right? We needed to have some sort of truce. The odds of me convincing Doug, possibly the most objective person alive, that religion should be a part of his life were as slim as him convincing me. A kid raised in a house that were at a radio station might as well, he often says, have been called WJEW, all Jewish, all the time. The chance of him convincing me to give it up was quite slim. We called a truce. I stopped poking at him during services to listen to this part that isn't all hell and damnation. And he stopped dragging me into the other room to listen to Sam Harris spouting his atheism on late-night TV talk shows. But the fun parts were, in fact, the challenges. Like during the Second Intifada some number of years ago, when Doug called and asked me to come to his house to hang a mezuzah on his door. He didn't believe in the God part, but he felt it was time to identify publicly as a Jew. I told him to pick one out for himself, to connect with it. Hiddur mitzvah, the beautification of a mitzvah at its finest. And I said to him, I would buy the cloth, the scroll that goes inside the mezuzah, since they can be pricey, and I didn't want that to be a barrier. And he said to me, oh no, I don't want the cloth inside. He said, Leora, that's the text. I obviously disagree with the most in Judaism. Teaching your children to believe in one God before they can even consciously choose for themselves? I said, so you want me to come to your apartment, right? 5th year of rabbinical school. You want me to come to your apartment and hang an empty mezuzah on your door? He said, yes. I said, fine, because you're choosing, I got a over there. I know. I said, because you are making this choice and you would like to identify Jewishly, I will do this. I said, but should we stay together? If we get married, I want to be clear, we are not hanging an empty mezuzah on my door, and we're not going to write our own scroll. We're putting a mezuzah on the door with, the text. Or perhaps the time that after moving in together, Doug said he couldn't keep kosher, even though we had agreed when we first started dating, and he had said that he would keep kosher. Should we stay together, get married, fall in love, all of those things. Now, 2 weeks into the living of the together, he claimed that the climate disaster, which he's a big environmentalist, the climate disaster of running the dishwasher twice for half as many dishes, the lost cabinet space in a New York apartment, the horror of using margarine while cooking, it was all too much for him. And I said, but keeping kosher is a part of how I think about my values all day long. And he replied, okay, but on the dishwasher alone, isn't part of koshering about boiling the water? Isn't a dishwasher boiling water? And since you're a mystic, I know you don't believe in a third-person God who is watching all of this. And so, Rabbi, wouldn't you say that using the dishwasher and the boiling water would be okay with both of the dishes, the meat and the dairy, in there at the same time? God isn't watching you like a hawk, and so we keep kosher. We do run both kinds of dishes in the dishwasher at the same time, except I will say that I have been known to go in and separate my milk and my meat dishes because I feel like they shouldn't be touching. You should all agree. At the same time, there were so many other stories about how we managed to make this work, the conversations that we had, how we had kippot made for our wedding, where even the beautiful and dear friend of my family, Debbie Friedman, sang, except that we had the kippot made. He did not wear one, but he agreed that they should be there in case others wanted to wear one. We also realized, though, early on that this wasn't going to be just about us, that it was going to shape our future family. Doug's mom ran an early childhood center, so he did understand childhood development. And he agreed that we needed to send consistent messages early on should we have kids. He, in fact, is the one who fought when we finally did get pregnant to say that whether we had a girl or a boy, we would have a naming ceremony on the 8th day, because if we were going to perform some ooga booga ceremony on a boy for the 8th day, we should do so for a girl as well, which we did. She's here. She's in the back. Luckily, he was fine with Shabbat. Who wouldn't want a weekly reset and a family dinner? I did the blessings, and he would add the best thing of the week ritual to our table. And to his credit, when I'm not home, he does all of it. Now he just makes the kids do the blessing. But when they couldn't, he would do the blessings for them. We agreed that once the kids were older, we'd be honest with them about our beliefs and let them choose their practice in the best of Reform tradition, through education and thoughtful autonomy post-B'nai Mitzvah. And this week's Torah portion begins the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, in the wilderness. I have to say that there were moments when we were in the wilderness on this path, but we also found our way. And that's what I wanted to share tonight. I had a few choices about what I would talk about, and I asked various people, and I finally received an answer that resonated. I did receive this answer also from Kaye the other day when I met her, but this is the answer that actually resonated, that in asking people, one person said I should do this topic tonight because the melding of these two seemingly very different, dare I say, opposite worldviews, it seemed hopeful, and that we could all use a little bit of optimism this week. So it really is less about me and Doug and more about this idea. that you all are likely in relationships, even right now, where you are not seeing eye to eye with somebody that you encounter. You can imagine the Israel-Palestine conversations that we have in our house. They are lively. But there is a way to have those conversations. They are possible to navigate. Really, they are possible to navigate. And should you wonder how it's all going now, well, our 15 and our 12-year-old have become very involved in the synagogue. They play guitar. One is a madrich. The other will be in just a year. Yep, it's the one in the corner. They are sometimes, frequently in fact, invited to lead services, which means that Doug, as a good father, has had to come to services far more often than he ever imagined he would, and not because of me. And our daughter decided that after she became bat mitzvah, she was no longer going to keep kosher, and just yesterday fought me on whether or not she could make a turkey and cheese sandwich with my dishes in my house, arguing that she should be allowed because we had taught her to make her own reform movement choices, and she had. So I would say we're doing all right. We are all doing all right. Good Shabbos.